remember the house on St. James's Place as though it were still alive with whispers. It was the kind of home that clung to silence, where shadows seemed to linger a moment too long in the corners, and the air carried that damp, restless chill that never quite left the walls. Harriet Pearson, frail and fading, lay in the upstairs room. She had lived alone since her beloved sister Anne passed years before, though alone may not have been the right word. The house never felt empty. Not really. On the night of December 23rd, the corridors were hushed except for the faint flicker of candlelight and the steady creak of the old floorboards under cautious footsteps. I was in the room opposite Harriet's, the door left ajar in case I was needed. The flames from our candles painted long, trembling streaks of light along the hallway. Emma and I tried to rest, though sleep never came easily in that place. It was close to 1 in the morning when I awoke to a soundless pull, as though something had reached inside my chest and tugged me from my sleep. My eyes drifted to the doorway, and there, passing slowly through the trembling glow, was a woman. She moved with a quiet purpose, wrapped in a shawl, a dark cap shadowing her face. Her footsteps made no sound, yet every beat of my heart hammered against my ribs as though it recognized her before my mind dared to. The figure walked directly into Harriet's room and disappeared into the darkness. I froze. My breath caught, my throat locked. Emma stirred beside me, and when our eyes met, I knew she had seen it too. The shape, the way she held herself, was unmistakable. Anne, Harriet's sister, long dead, had walked calmly past our door. A moment later, a shriek tore through the silence. Mrs. Pearson stumbled out of Harriet's bedroom, pale and trembling, clutching her chest as if she'd seen death itself. The three of us gathered in the hall, our voices shaking, each of us confessing the same impossible truth. We had seen Anne, return from the grave, come for her sister at last. Hours later, when dawn seeped gray and cold through the windows, Harriet whispered her final words. She told usher caretakers through those last weeks that she too had seen Anne that night, standing by her bed, waiting. And by sunrise on Christmas Eve, Harriet was gone. It hammered against my ribs as though it recognized her before my mind dared to. The figure walked directly into Harriet's room and disappeared into the darkness. I froze. My breath caught, my throat locked. Emma stirred beside me, and when our eyes met, I knew she had seen it too. The shape, the way she held herself, was unmistakable. Anne, Harriet's sister, long dead, had walked calmly past our door. A moment later, a shriek tore through the silence. Mrs. Pearson stumbled out of Harriet's bedroom, pale and trembling, clutching her chest as if she'd seen death itself. The three of us gathered in the hall, our voices shaking, each of us confessing the same impossible truth. We had seen Anne, return from the grave, come for her sister at last. Hours later, when dawn seeped gray and cold through the windows, Harriet whispered her final words. She told usher caretakers through those last weeks that she too had seen Anne that night, standing by her bed, waiting. And by sunrise on Christmas Eve, Harriet was gone. I didn't go looking for a curse. Who does? I signed the lease because the place felt stately, white and black tiles in the hall, tall ceilings that held the afternoon sun like a cathedral. The first day I stepped through the entrance on King Street, I told myself I'd found a quiet corner of London where words would come easily and sleep would come easier. But the truth sat waiting 1 floor above me, in a room that never blinked. At first it was only pressure, a hush that settled on my shoulders as I climbed the stairs to the second-floor parlor. The hearth was small, the molding delicate, a door beside the fireplace leading into a dressing room. Pretty ordinary details, except the far left corner felt wrong, like air cooling on one side of the neck. Have you ever had the sense that a room is holding its breath just to see what you'll do? That's what it was. The moment I crossed the threshold, something inside that corner leaned forward, the way a stranger leans in when they've learned your name. I stared into the dim wedge where the cornice met the wall and tried to laugh at myself. It stared back harder. If a room is watching, which one of you leaves first? The first 2 weeks frayed me down to threads, my marriage already thinly split neatly along old seams. She packed, I stayed. I told myself the loneliness would quiet the place, but it only sharpened it. Nights dragged. The light switch clicked like a trigger. I'd sit on the sofa and feel something waiting by the fireplace, a patient hatred that didn't need to speak to be understood. I stopped expecting sleep. I started expecting the corner. If you've never counted the seconds between your own heartbeats, praying the next one will drown out a whisper that isn't there. You might not understand what that room did to me. Bad luck began to stack itself like plates. First, the burglary. Everything of value gone, family pieces lost to someone else's pockets. No insurance, of course. Then downstairs the china shop shuttered. After that, a wine merchant took the lease and failed just as quickly, as if the walls tasted profit and soured it before the ink dried. I told myself these were coincidences. Coincidence is a generous word. How many accidents make a pattern? How many patterns make a warning? Salvation arrived for a weekend with Irish laughter from my sister, my godson, my goddaughter. Their voices moved through the flat like warm mud pushing back the chill. For a while, the corner retreated. We cooked. We talked. I almost believed the house was only a house and I had only been tired. It held until the night I returned alone. I remember the smell first. Dust warmed by the day, then cooled by the abrupt electric flip of darkness recoiling from the lamps. I stepped into the parlor and felt it was stronger than before. The corner was awake and close, as if something had stood from its chair and decided to be seen. The hair on my arms rose. I swallowed the feeling and started towards the bedroom. Upstairs, her scream cut the house into pieces. I ran the kind of run where the corridor stretches, like rubber, and the door keeps skidding away from your hands. I shouldered into the room and found my goddaughter, 19 and shaking, fists twisted in the bedsheets like rope. Her eyes were fixed on my face, but her body was angled toward the open door, as if she'd been listening for footsteps that never came. It took long minutes for words to untangle from her sobs. She'd returned early, she said. She'd passed the parlor, paused at the threshold. Something waited by the fireplace, black, bound, staring. She didn't have better words. Neither did I, because I knew that corner. I'd felt its gaze like a nail. Now she had seen what I hadn't dared to see. By morning, the illusion of safety was gone. My family packed to leave. I walked room to room, feeling the house lean quietly against me, almost amused. When my sister looked at me and said, "You're beginning to look haunted," I realized I'd already made the decision. I broke the lease, paid what I had to pay, left. Relief felt like dropping a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of my body. I should have done it sooner. That's the worst part about a curse. It always convinces you that staying one more night might make it kinder. Years later, all the city noise had calcified into a pleasant background hum. I brought a friend from Canada to London and decided, in a mood somewhere between bravado and self-mockery, to show him where I'd once lived. As we walked, we met an old man with a butler's posture and a walking stick that tapped out the past. He knew these houses like family names. He pointed with the stick as if conducting an orchestra. This house, this scandal, that shop, that ruin. When he reached my old place, he stopped. "That one," he said, as if confiding a joke with a sharp edge, "is the unluckiest house in London. Truly cursed." I felt my throat go dry. He didn't know me. He didn't know my story. He went on anyway. 2 centuries ago, he said, a master and his servant vanished from the neighborhood without a word. When someone finally went inside, they found the servant rotting in a chair in that second-floor room, strangled by a rope, tongue swollen black, eyes bulging. No one ever found the master, and some said the dead servant still sat in the corner watching, waiting for someone to discover the end of a story that never came. What if the thing in the corner isn't a ghost at all, but a question that refuses to be answered? I didn't tell the old man I had lived there. I didn't tell my friend that his description fit the angle of that room with a brutal exactness. I only stared up at the windows, imagining a presence knotted into the wood and plaster, too tightly bound to decay. The old man finished his tale with a dry certainty. People came and went, and none of them prospered while they stayed. He shook his head as if the building itself had won a long, petty argument. Then war came, and the Blitz dropped its iron rain. One night that house disappeared into fire and rubble. If curses end, I thought, they end like that, burning so hot they can't hold together. The street was rebuilt with clean lines and modern brick, the kind of architecture that won't remember you back. I passed the spot once, years later. Nothing watched me from the corner. There was no corner at all. And yet when the afternoon light fell at a slant, I felt the old pressure between my shoulders, as if an absence could stare. Some rooms you leave behind. Some rooms keep your outline. Would you have stayed one more night just to prove it was all in your head? Or left the moment the room started looking back? Airports are supposed to hum with order steel glass schedules, but Heathrow in its early years carried something else in its concrete bones, something left behind after fire and fog swallowed a plane whole. It was March the 2nd, 1948, when the disaster struck. The night was thick with mist, the kind that blinds headlights and swallows voices. A Douglas DC-3 descended into the haze and never rose again. It tore into the ground just short of the runway. The flames licked high into the dark sky, devouring metal, flesh, and memory. 18 souls were gone before their names could be written in ink. It was the airport's first tragedy, and it left more than wreckage behind. In the hours that followed, rescuers picked through the smoldering ruin. That's when he appeared. A man well-dressed, calm in the chaos, stepping out of the fog as though the disaster hadn't touched him at all. He asked for one thing, his briefcase. The fire crews, still stunned, told him to wait until the search was over. He nodded once, then walked back into the fog. Later, among the charred wreckage, they claimed to have found his body burned, broken, unrecognizable. If that were true, then who had spoken to them? Years passed, but the runway never forgot. In 1970, Inspector Leslie Alton got the call. Radar had caught something walking across one of the runways. Not a vehicle, not a bird, not a mistake, something human. Alton and his team raced out, tires screeching over the tarmac. They stopped where the tower said the figure was standing. Nothing, empty air. The tower radioed again, insistent. "He's right behind you. Your car nearly hit him." Alton spun, but the night gave him nothing back. Imagine standing on a runway, floodlights burning down on you, while a voice in your ear swears someone is inches away and you can't see them. The figure never stayed still. Radar tracked it again and again in the weeks that followed, gliding across the landing strips, pacing where the doomed DC-3 had gone down. Yet no officer, no worker on the ground could ever find the man. Sometimes the radar claimed he stood in the path of oncoming aircraft directly in harm's way. Pilots even reported swerving, believing they had nearly run someone down. Engines roared, brakes screamed, but nothing was there. Decades later, whispers hadn't died. In 2014, long after the radar sightings had faded, a veteran airport worker admitted on record that pilots still told him the same thing. A man in the fog, carrying a briefcase, walking calmly down the runway. Some swore they saw him so clearly that they demanded the ground crew check for bodies, but there was never anyone there. No trace but the rattled voices of men who had flown thousands of hours and didn't believe in ghosts. And yet the reports aligned: always the runway, always the fog, always the same figure with the same briefcase. Coincidence or something bound forever to that night in 1948? If you saw a figure walking calmly across a live runway, would you believe your eyes or the empty air under your wheels? There are places in London where history runs deep in stone, and others where it runs beneath the river. The Blackwall Tunnel is one of those places. Every day, thousands of engines echo through its curved walls. But if you drive it late enough at night, when the traffic thins and the air smells of damp brick and oil, you can almost hear something else, something that doesn't belong to the living. The story I'm about to tell begins in October of 1972. A motorcyclist, riding alone near Greenwich, slowed when he saw a young man on the roadside. The stranger lifted a hand asking for a ride. The biker, maybe out of pity or simple camaraderie, agreed. The boy climbed on, gave an address in Essex, and they roared off together into the yawning mouth of the tunnel. The journey was unremarkable until it wasn't. Halfway through, the rider shouted something over his shoulder, only to be met with silence. He risked a glance back and his blood went cold. The seat behind him was empty. The boy was gone. Now anyone who rides knows you'd feel it if someone fell off. The sudden lightness, the shift in balance, you can't miss it. But he hadn't felt a thing. Panic rising, he doubled back, headlights slicing the walls of the tunnel. Nobody. No commotion. No one had seen a figure tumble onto the concrete. It was as if the passenger had never existed. How do you explain a missing man when you know he was there moments ago? Still shaken, the motorcyclist rode to the Essex address the next day, hoping to make sense of what had happened. When he knocked, the door creaked open to reveal a family one who claimed the boy had died years earlier. The rider's story unraveled then and there. If the boy was long dead, who had he carried across the river? Of course, with stories like these, the details twist depending on who's telling them. Some say it was a young woman, not a man. Some claim the hitchhiker was picked up inside the tunnel itself. Others insist the figure was the ghost of a biker who had died in a crash not far from the spot. The most chilling version connects the legend to an accident in 1960, when a motorcyclist skidded in the rain and slammed into a signpost, killed instantly. Witnesses swore that on rainy nights they could still hear the screech of tires and the crash repeating itself like an echo carved into the road. One couple, the Dents, even wrote to a magazine decades later describing what they had heard. Living near Blackwall Lane, less than a mile south of the tunnel, they were jolted awake by the sound of skidding tires and a sickening thud. When they rushed outside, there was nothing. No car, no bike, no broken body, just silence and the wet sheen of rain on asphalt. It happened again days later. The exact same sequence, as though the accident were doomed to replay for anyone willing to listen. Would you keep driving through that tunnel after hearing a story like this? Or would you take the long way around the river? The phantom hitchhiker of Blackwall remains one of the city's strangest tales. A ghost who asks for a ride only to vanish mid-journey. Whether he or she was the spirit of a restless biker, a victim of the tunnel's construction, or something older still, no one knows. But drivers whisper the same warning. If you ever feel the urge to stop for a lone figure near the tunnel's mouth, think twice before you let them climb aboard. It was a winter's evening in 1913. and the church had just emptied of choir boys, their voices fading into the streets of Kensington. I was the last to linger, collecting my things beneath the flickering lamps. The nave was still and cool, carrying that hollow echo churches always seem to hold after song. That's when I noticed her. She stepped from between the pews, pale, urgent, her eyes wide with a kind of fear that burrowed straight into me. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "There is a man nearby who is dying. He fears for his soul. He begs for you. Please come now." There was no hesitation in me. Duty pulled me forward. Within minutes we were in a cab together, rattling through dark, gaslit streets. She barely spoke, only glanced out the window as though every second lost was another step closer to damnation. When we stopped at a grand house, she led me to the door. A butler answered. I explained that I'd been summoned to the side of a man gravely ill, a man desperate to confess. The butler's brow creased. "There must be a mistake," he said quietly. "No one here is unwell." Confusion twisted in me, and I turned to her for confirmation, but she was gone. No rustle of skirts on the steps, no echo down the street. The cab that had brought us had vanished as well. I stood there alone, staring into a road that offered no answers. What do you do when the only witness to your story evaporates like smoke? The master of the house himself appeared. Curious about the commotion, I told him what had happened, how a distressed woman had begged me to come, insisting he was on his deathbed. The man listened carefully, then frowned. He insisted he felt well, but then, after a pause, he admitted he had been meaning to seek me out about other matters concerning the state of his soul. "Since you are here," he said, "let us talk." So we sat together for nearly an hour. He poured out his doubts, his fears, his unease about the weight he carried. I assured him as best I could that he might find peace in faith and repentance. Before I left, we arranged to meet the following morning at the church to continue our conversation. For the first time that night, I felt the strange errand had meaning, that perhaps the mysterious woman had been heaven-sent after all. But when the next day came, the man did not appear. Concern clawed at me. I walked back to his house, heart heavy with dread. The butler met me at the door, his expression grim. His master had died suddenly only hours after I'd left. He guided me upstairs to the bedroom where the body lay. There on the table beside him sat a photograph in a simple frame. My blood turned to ice. The face staring back at me was hers, the woman who had come to fetch me the night before. The butler's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "That is my master's wife," he said, his tone weighted with sorrow. "She died 15 years ago. Was she a grieving soul unable to let her husband slip away unshriven, or something darker that needed him to confess before the grave took him?"